To deliver his opening remarks and today's chair, I would like to hand over to Ken Wells, Director Partnerships at the UK-ASEAN Business Council. Ken, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Veronica, and hello, everybody. Good afternoon in Indonesia. Good morning in the UK. It's an unexpected pleasure for me to be chairing this important event at which the Connected Places Catapult, otherwise known as CPC, is launching its Net Zero Framework report. CPC is the UK's innovation accelerator for cities, transport and places. Through the Net Zero Framework that we'll hear about today, CPC offers Indonesian and UK business a platform for partnership and collaboration. Richard Graham MP was to have been in the chair today, but he's been called away on urgent business. But he sent us a recorded message, which we'll hear soon. First, a note on the report. It addresses 5 Indonesian provinces, namely DKI Jakarta, West Java, Central Java, East Java, and Bali. Indonesia's goal is to achieve net zero atmospheric carbon emissions by 2060, so just 38 years to go. The report focuses on the important role that the 5 provinces can play in this transition to net zero. And the initiative underlines the UK and Indonesia's commitment to be active partners in tackling climate change. We'll hear many things today that raise thoughts and questions. Please put them in the question box as we go along, and this will give the panel plenty to think about later on. Let's now hear from Richard Graham MP, the Prime Minister's trade envoy to Indonesia.
Selamat sore Bapak-Bapak, Tuan-Tuan, Ibu-Ibu, semuanya di Jakarta untuk acara ini Net Zero Framework for Indonesian Provinces. The report oleh UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office to colleagues in Indonesia. And I want to thank especially Bapak Arifin Rudianto, Wakil Menteri Maritime Natural Resources, dan teman-teman lain di Bappenas yang banyak membantu kami dengan report ini. I also want to thank Professor Greg Clark and those at the Connected Places Catapult for their work and their cooperation, their kerjasama dengan Dr. Bagus Mojadi and our friends in UK-ASEAN. Ada lagi yang membantu acara ini di Bali, Jakarta, Jawa Tengah, Jawa Timur, Jawa Barat, semuanya di Jawa sebetulnya kecuali mereka yang di Bali. And our panel members Alison and Rob, and the UK-ASEAN Business Council, the UK-ABC itu namanya, for hosting this launch and webinar. So, look, there are 1 or 2 things I just want to quickly say by way of introduction. The first one is that Bapak President Jokowi was there at COP26 along with our Prime Minister Boris Johnson and many other world leaders. They made some big commitments, and these commitments are what Indonesia, as chair of the G20 this year, will want to develop and see how Indonesia and the rest of the world can together make real progress on climate change, because we know from floods, storms, typhoons and everything else that climate change is catastrophic. So, as the president of G20, Indonesia has a big role this year, and we're here to help. So the joint UK-Indonesia progress, what I call the kerja keras, kerja terus, kerja sama, is definitely underway, and the Connected Places Catapult is an organization which can definitely help you on this. There are 1 or 2 things I think which will emerge in this seminar, which I hope will be helpful. The first one is where the UK strengths are. apanya yang bisa dibantu oleh perusahaan-perusahaan Inggris sebetulnya? Where are our great strengths? And I think that in renewables energy, you'll be hearing about some of our strengths, particularly on solar ventures, where we've done quite a lot of work in Southeast Asia already. Businesses like Rice Energy, Lightsource BP, Ion Ventures, Solar, Shire Oak International, and they can talk about their plans to manufacture some of their renewables technology like PV module and small wind turbines actually in Southeast Asia, potentially in Indonesia. Then there's also some of the offshore wind gurus, Scottish and Southern Electric, SSE's renewables, Trelleborg's applied technology, and Kinewell's energy. All of these are producing a lot of offshore wind around the UK, and they can do the same in Indonesia. And then thirdly, the area which I've spent a lot of time on is the marine energy, getting power from the strength of the tides and waves. And we have very strong tides in the UK, particularly in the north and the west and a little bit in the south. And you have it also, particularly in the east. In Nusa Tenggara is the most obvious place, Nusa Tenggara Timur, but also there are other parts of Indonesia as well. And so I hope that your engagement with companies like Nova Innovation, Orbital Marine, Cymec Atlantis, QED Naval, Inyanga Maritime, helped by local companies like SBS International, will be able to really develop some tidal projects in Indonesia. And then lastly, of course, there are real opportunities on electric hybrid buses, replacing diesel ones. We've already got a UK company, Switch Mobility, working with Transjakarta, and there are others like Alexander Dennis and Wrightbus who will be looking to offer their buses and products into Indonesia. And you know, in London we've got now 2,600 diesel electric hybrid buses. They're reducing their emissions by up to 40%, and the sustainable travel, whether by foot, cycle or public transport, is now up about 80% on where it was only a few years ago. So we believe there's huge potential, just as there is here in the UK, sama-sama di Jakarta atau di Indonesia, di seluruh Indonesia sebetulnya. So there are lots of opportunities ahead, maritime, industry, housing, but I think our work on renewable energy will be a major opportunity. Jadi, saya mau mengucapkan banyak terima kasih kepada Anda semuanya. Everybody who's involved in this, I want to thank you for your participation, your coming to this great seminar, and I look forward to hearing how it's gone and where you think the best opportunities ahead lie. Langsung, mari kita semua kerjasama lagi. Terima kasih banyak.
Richard, thank you. It was great to hear from you. Sorry you can't be with us in person. But please hold on to that thought that Richard left us with. He said, where do we think the best opportunities ahead lie? And we'll come back to that. But now we move on to hear from Bappenas. Bappenas is the Ministry of National Development Planning in Indonesia and a strong supporter of today's launch. The Deputy Minister for Maritime and Natural Resources Affairs, Dr. Arifin Rudianto, had intended to be with us to deliver the keynote address. However, as with Richard, he too has been called away at short notice on government business. And instead, Ms. Angji Putri, who is Deputy Head of the Environmental Affairs Directorate, will now kindly be delivering the keynote address from Bappenas on why the net zero framework for Indonesian provinces is important. Anggi, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Ken. Excellency, Prime Minister Trade Envoy to Indonesia, Richard Graham, that cannot be here today with us. Ibu Siti Indasari from Damri, Dr. Bagus Muljadi from University of Nottingham, Rob Cooper from BP City Solution, and colleagues from Connected Place Catapult. Distinguished participant, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Jakarta, Indonesia. First, allow me to apologize, like what Mr. Ken have said before, that Mr. Arifin Rudi could not join us to this webinar due to conflicting schedules. I wanted to also express my pleasure to be part of this virtual event amid a challenging situation that we are all still facing. And I really hope that all of you and your family are in good health. I also want to express our appreciation and gratitude to all participants joining Connected Places Catapult Net Zero Framework for Indonesian Province, led by the Connected Place Catapult and also delivered by the UK-ASEAN Business Council. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the impact of climate change we've experienced to date have significantly changed life. As we know it, as one of the most vulnerable countries to the climate change, Indonesia already sees significant environmental issues across the nation and more frequent severe climate-related disasters. Meanwhile, the COVID-19 pandemic has also created a multidimensional crisis all over the world. And together, these two crises have made Indonesia no longer as it was before. But despite this challenge, Indonesia remains committed to achieve our sustainable development goals. We see the opportunity to rebuild back and better, or build back better, and bring the development trajectory back to the right path through our economic transformation strategy. So it is in line with the goal number 13, climate action as the foundation. The government of Indonesia has made green economy as one of the game changers in the strategy. In this regard, low carbon development and also climate resilience initiative plays an important role as the backbone of green economy transition. Both low carbon development and climate resilience initiative have been integrated in our national priority agendas in National Development Plan 2020 until 2024 that has been established under the Presidential Decree number 18 year 2020. These two policies have a wedge that will provide co-benefits to each other. So we have to go low carbon and also climate resilience in the same path and the same time. And in addition, these both strategies is addressing climate change and also help us to achieve other targets such as economic growth and also poverty targets. Low carbon development itself, we have 5 main strategies, including sustainable energy development. This is on renewable energy and energy efficiency. We have sustainable land recovery. This is more on the forest side and also peatlands and agriculture. We have waste management and also circular economy. Although we understand circular economy is beyond waste management, it's resource efficiency, but we want to move further towards circular economy. And then there's the green industry development because we also know that the low carbon and climate resilience is not only a part of the government but also part of the private sector itself. We also have the low carbon coastal and marine that focus on the mangrove system. And we also have 4 priority sectors for the climate resilience. These are the protection of coastal resilience in the marine sector, and then increasing water security, increasing climate resilience in agriculture sector, and also protecting health sector and from the climate impact. So the government of Indonesia will continue to ensure that the implementation of low carbon development and climate resilience is on track to meet the target sets in the RPJMN 2020 until 2024. But indeed, our efforts did not stop there. We constantly strive for an even more ambitious climate target through our current scenarios exercise of achieving the net zero emission by 2060 or earlier. And hopefully this study that we are discussing today on the net zero framework for Indonesian province can enhance and accelerate those above mentioned targets in the subnational level, especially in DKI Jakarta, West Java, Central Java, East Java, and also Bali province. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the challenges in achieving the target is, of course, the funding and investment. And we cannot solely depend on the state budget, either it's national or subnational. We cannot only depend on grants or concessional loan. It is important for us to also accelerate and leverage private investment to be able to achieve this ambitious target. We need to set the enabling condition for the green investment in Indonesia. And it is also have been mentioned from Pak Jokowi speech during the COP26. Ladies and gentlemen, this net zero target would be impossible to be reached without the joint work of the stakeholders and strong collaboration between multiple groups, including the government, the private sector, philanthropy, international community, society, and other parties at all levels. Therefore, I would like to invite all of you to take this opportunity of shared learning and experience to enhance our cooperation in achieving the future we want that is low carbon, resilient, and more sustainable. Finally, I wish you a productive discussion, and I would like to invite all of you to take the momentum of this shared learning opportunity as a provision for future collective action towards climate change. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Angie, thank you so much. That was wonderful. And I love that ending piece where you talked about collective action, all of us working together to help the world. And indeed, today we're talking about Indonesia, make that transition. You talked about moving to carbon reduction, while at the same time achieving energy resilience and balancing the standard of living, protecting forests, managing waste, developing the circular economy, protecting the marine sector, which of course is very important, climate resilience in the agricultural sector, and importantly, for anyone in the finance sector, funding the change and the importance of green investment. That was great. Thank you so much. Well, we can all see the vital role that Bappenas plays in Indonesia's national planning, and our thanks again to Anggi. It's now my pleasure to invite Alison Young to present CPC's Net Zero Framework. We'll be hearing from Allison in a moment. Looking forward very much to the presentation on your findings, Allison. Allison leads on trade and investment at CPC. Since joining CPC from the Department for International Trade last year, she's been part of the global leadership team extending CPC's participation in Asia and the Pacific. Allison, we look forward to hearing more about the pathways that the team has identified to accelerate the reduction of emissions in the 5 provinces and the partnerships that you've identified that are needed to achieve this goal. Before I hand over to you, just a reminder to everyone on the call, please, if you've not asked a question yet, please do so. Keep the questions coming. We need them for when we get to the panel. And now, Allison, over to you to hear about the net zero framework. Thank you.
Many thanks, Ken, and good afternoon to those in Indonesia, and good morning to everyone in the UK. It's an honour to be here with you today, and as Ken said, I'm a global export and investment specialist at the Connected Places Catapult, and will be presenting the overview of our findings on pathways and partnerships to accelerated emissions reduction in Indonesian provinces. So as we've heard already from everyone who's spoken before me, that climate change really is something that is affecting all of us and is really high on everyone's agenda. Post COP26, the UK has very much been looking at climate change. The Prime Minister announced the 10-point plan to the Green Industrial Revolution last year. Indonesia is holds the presidency of the G20 this year, and sustainable energy transition, digital transformation, recovering together, recovering stronger are key themes within that presidency, working towards net zero by 2060. And we really wanted to use this framework and today's presentation as an opportunity to present our understanding of where the 5 Indonesian provinces are in their journey to net zero, and where there are opportunities for collaboration between Indonesia and the UK. So they're very high level findings. It isn't a ranking at all, just to stress that. And I do want to say before I start, thank you so much to everyone who's been involved in this. Thank you to the provincial governments and stakeholders in Indonesia who we've spoken to create this study, and also to the FCDO and the British Embassy in Indonesia who supported this, and to our partners in the UK, the Business of Cities, who helped create this study. So the report's being finalised. It should be published, I think, in mid-April, and will be shared on a landing page, and I think we'll share that link with you later. So for those of you who don't know, the Connected Places Catapult are the UK's innovation agency for smart cities and mobility. The UK has a network of 9 catapults across the UK that were set up to accelerate various areas of UK innovation. So we very much support the UK government and align with the work that they're doing. We sit in a very interesting place where we convene, we bring together government, whether national or local, academia and research partners, and also industry. And we are very focused on climate change, net zero and resilience, levelling up and economic development, and also post-pandemic recovery, which I know, again, is something key to all of us. We focus on regulation and policy. We help, for example, the Department for Transport in the UK look at, for example, policy around autonomous vehicles on the roads. We also work with industry and government around test beds and pilots to trial new technologies. We have accelerator programs, and we also have reports like this. But with a report like this, as Ken said at the beginning, we want it to be a platform for collaboration and partnership to actually deliver and take things forward. So to actually create the opportunities for the UK and Indonesia to partner. Next slide, please. So Indonesia and the UK have a very strong relationship, and there's a huge focus, as Angie has outlined so clearly previously to me. You know, Indonesia has huge ambitions and is creating a lot of legislation around carbon sinks, phasing coal down, electric vehicles and their uptake across Indonesia, and also looking at solar and carbon trading. It's becoming a more urban focused and city influenced nation. More people are moving into the cities. City resilience and resilience in general is key, and a key focus area which Angie outlined. There are multiple renewable energy mega projects and pilots that really reflect a commitment in Indonesia to exploring alternative sources and models of energy. So, aligning this to Indonesia's Vision 2045, the UK government wanted to look at ways that we could create more opportunities for collaboration. And so this is why the study came around. Next slide, please. So in terms of the report overview, the three areas that we really want to focus on and foster are very much the partnership opportunities for academia and sciences that are already ongoing, but to develop those, to increase them. Trade and investment opportunities for the UK and Indonesia, and then the knowledge sharing element, so sharing best practice between both countries. Next slide, please. So in terms of the report, Indonesia has several special ingredients that make it really pivotal to the global mission to curb carbon emissions. Among them are its largest provinces, which are really well placed to set the bar for how to combine urbanization with diverse economies, prosperity, and accelerated emissions reduction. And this slide, this table shows what exists, the political frameworks that are in existence, and then the new catalysts which can be used to create the change across the 5 provinces. Next slide, please. So Indonesia's growth potential will depend on raising the technical and financial capacity of subnational governments, being able to spread the message on emissions, and finding ways for more provinces to partner up. And we can see here the challenges, the implications of those, and the recommendations that we've come out with. And it's very much not pitching the UK as we know it all, we want to tell you what to do at all. We want to very much collaborate and partner and learn as well, because I think we don't always know all the answers, and I think there's a huge opportunity here to leverage that shared learning and opportunity together. Next slide, please. So to go through the 5 profiles, just to stress again, it's not a ranking system at all. It's just very much outlining the sort of current status of where each province is on their current journey to net zero. So next slide, please. We've also taken into account that each province really has a very different way of operating and governing. So they plan, they finance, and they report in very distinct ways. They also are very different in terms of some are more rural, some are more urbanized. So there are primarily urban provinces and then provinces with very significant rural areas. So the provinces which are mostly rural with 1 or 2 major cities mean that their journey to emissions reduction will be very different. So that is also taken into account. Some, like Central Java, have very metropolitan areas that in relative terms take up a far lower proportion of the state than others do, and then will therefore face more of a challenge in tackling agricultural and land use emissions, for example, relating to deforestation. In other more urban provinces, such as West Java and Jakarta, the main sectors for action will relate to transport, energy, and waste. Next slide, please. So in terms of DKI Jakarta, it is set to remain the primary entry point for international businesses entering the market. It is a regional economic powerhouse, but also a global trade gateway. So this will probably still be the entry point for a lot of UK companies if they are entering the market. Opportunities in mobility are key with all the projects taking place, energy transition, and also that sort of international trade hub. Next slide, please. In terms of West Java, its efforts mainly focus on transport and energy, which together account for nearly half of all emissions in the province. The large transport rail networks and several energy mega projects are planned, especially in geothermal, where the province has a really large potential in the country. So again, mobility projects are key, and there are some huge potential opportunities. Next slide, please. In terms of Bali, it is the tourism hub for Indonesia, and really focusing on the visitor economy and sustainability. It's made significant progress on zero plastics and renewable energy legislation as well. And again, the theme of mobility and the projects that are planned and in progress are very much mobility focused, green and ecotourism, and also looking at more sustainability in terms of that plastic-free, sort of zero plastics, taking that forward. Next slide, please. Thank you. And outside of for Central Java, outside of its urban areas, the highly rural province has an economy focused on agriculture. The capital, Semarang, is a manufacturing and logistics hub, although does have a growing financial sector, which includes regional HQ offices of numerous international and national banks. So there are huge opportunities there as well for international trade. The energy transition, again, is key in terms of the big moves that are taking place in the province. Again, mobility is going to be a really strong focus area as well. Next slide, please. So again, East Java is a highly rural province with a population heavily concentrated in and around Surabaya, which is Indonesia's second city. It's home to Indonesia's main hub port, so manufacturing and logistics play a crucial role in the region's economy. It's undergone rapid urbanization, which has led to the redevelopment of slum areas, and there is a real renewed focus on high capacity transport infrastructure. So again, that common theme of mobility to move that forward, logistics, but also opportunities around green maritime as well. Next slide, please. So that really was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and as we said at the beginning, slides will be shared, and obviously the report will be available in a couple of weeks' time for you to actually read and digest more slowly. But in terms of next steps and collaboration, the UK and Indonesia benefit from really strong existing bilateral and multilateral links. And I think as we've seen on this event so far, the shared recognition of the benefits that partnership can bring working together. So cross-cutting UK expertise can be deployed not only to boost technical capacity, but also help manage and commercialize pilots, improve monitoring and data and verification, and access to sustainable finance. Transport does appear to be one of the main sectors for UK partnership, given the level of investment in the sector from provincial and national government in Indonesia. It also poses an obvious opportunity to reduce emissions due to the high share of emissions produced by road transport in particular. Next slide, please. So in terms of recommended areas, we've listed kind of 5 initial recommended areas for partnership. The first being direct and joint capacity building of both local and provincial governments to tackle climate change. So working with multilaterals and NGOs, there are gaps to fill to provide training, awareness building, and qualifications around fiscally complex projects, for example. The second point, systems and incentive design on how to integrate the next cycle of transport infrastructure. So looking at ticket integration, route planning, the design of commercially viable public transport operations, and encouraging public transport uptake. All require demand-oriented expertise that UK partners have. The third point, support viable new technologies to commercialize post-pilot. So numerous trials and pilots of new emissions reducing technologies are underway. UK companies and institutions can help companies to finance, to implement specific use cases, or indeed to abandon unsuccessful pilots, and can help scope what will be required in terms of talent and technology scale up. The fourth point, mobility, land use, and usage data tracking is really urgently sought in order to support large-scale systems improvements, to know where to target efforts, incentivize behavior shifts, manage increasingly complex infrastructure networks. Again, an area that the UK can support in. And then finally, knowledge management systems that convert data into outcome-oriented metrics. So Indonesian provinces rely on converting raw data generated by green initiatives to baseline for metrics and measure outcomes. This will help assess how new technology or programs are delivering and their impact. So again, the UK is well placed to help in this area. And as Ken said, and as I stressed before, I think this really is a platform for collaboration and partnership, and we really want to utilize this study to galvanize that relationship around trade and investment, science and research opportunities, and knowledge sharing, all towards that climate change and net zero action. Next slide, please. So I appreciate, again, that was a very sort of very quick run through of the study, but we really do want your engagement in this. We really want to look at how we can create this UK-Indonesia net zero focused partnership and collaboration across those 3 key areas, and would really value your input and your engagement on this. So once the report is published, and obviously you've had a chance to read through that, we'd really love to hear from you. So thank you so much, and I will hand back to Ken.
Alison, that was great. Thank you very much indeed. You've given us a lot to think about. I know you're going to be on the panel shortly as well, so people can pick up with individual questions on your remarks. Everybody on the call, please do keep putting your questions forward. Thank you for those who've already put questions up for us, because we've now reached the point at which we're going to discuss everything we've heard this morning with the expert panel. And to do so, I'm delighted to introduce the person who's been managing this project from its inception, Roxana Slavcheva, who is the global lead at CPC. And just following on the theme of this morning, you might be wondering why you're not seeing Professor Greg Clark. He's come down with COVID. So we've lost 2 politicians for other things, and Greg sadly has come down with COVID. So we have the global lead, Roxana, who will be now leading the panel, and I hope very quickly getting into a lively discussion. Without more ado, Roxana, over to you.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you, Allison, again for the presentation of the findings of our report at CPC. Again, it's a pity that Professor Clark couldn't be here, but I am delighted to be chairing today's event in his place, particularly the event that is looking to connect Indonesia in the UK in an important common mission to achieve maximized well-being benefits for our citizens and our communities, and to accelerate the race to zero, to create opportunities for learning, sharing, exchange of knowledge and ideas, as Allison highlighted, and to pave the way for future collaboration in innovative technologies and services. So with this lofty goal in mind, I am joined today by an esteemed panel spanning a broad range of backgrounds, as you can see, which I'm very excited to introduce one by one. So we do have Ibu Rini, or Miss Siti Indah Suri, who is joining us as a director from Damri. We have Rob Cooper, who is representing BP City Solutions. We have Dr. Bagus Muljadi, who is assistant professor in engineering and also the coordinator for the UK-Indonesia Consortium for Interdisciplinary Sciences. And we will also be joined by Allison to give us more insights on the research that we have undertaken as part of this work. I'd like to, again, to echo what Ken has just mentioned, to remind our audience to make use of the chat function or Q&A function on the platform and send us questions to the panel as we begin. We will address those in a little bit. I've seen some engaging conversations, so really looking forward to getting into it. So I'd like to not waste any further time with introductions, but just to start with our first question as a way of introduction of our panelists. So we have been joined by Ibu Rini. Thank you for joining us from Damri. So you're a director of Damri. For those of you who are not aware, this is the motor transport enterprise of the Republic of Indonesia, which is a state-owned company operating road, passenger, cargo transport, just basically everything across the nation. So Ibu Rini, thank you for joining us. My first question to you is, now that we know that Indonesia can definitely leverage the net zero agenda to catalyze kind of low carbon transport solutions, as we've heard also from Ibu Anggi, how do we see the partnership with the UK companies playing out? So what areas of bilateral cooperation in this future mobility sector seem most promising between the two countries?
I think it's, thank you, Roxana. Please call me Rini. Hello, everyone. Talking about this low carbon emission and everything, I think this is already a priority. If you look at now, our Ministry of Transportation is already going towards that directions. We soon are going to be a part of this G20 partner, where we will operate electrical vehicle. And we also will have several other assignments from the government relating to the bus transportations. Apologize for the voice because this is time for the afternoon praying. So I think it's very important. However, there is a lot of things that, in my opinion, needs to be cleared initially, be it the regulatory of itself, the technical expertise, because there's not many company operating or available technology to do so in Indonesia. And the other support is not only about the technology itself, but the awareness to the whole society, because we operate in 58 cities all over Indonesia, be it the commercial part and also the assignment where we need to operate at the end of the country, you know, so in the very remote and deserted area, you know, so this a very different needs and mood. In big cities, the needs for this clean, technology-friendly things is already there. The other thing is the government regulations on that, because we also facing this issue, you know, we also do some research in our part to make this conversion, the bus conversion, but then there's not many available information or technology or support, because this has not come very cheap, because turns cheap and financially is very important. So I think it is a very important steps, Roxana.
Thank you, Rini. I do appreciate that that background and that context. As you said, you know, it's more of a holistic approach, and it's impacting urban areas specifically, very much as we also heard from Allison's presentation. And that leads me to Rob and his role and at BP City Solutions. So, Rob, you lead the business development for Asia as part of the region, cities, and solutions team at BP, and you have contributed to many different processes of kind of reinventing and restructuring the team, the organization, in line with the strategy for integrated energy company. So what can we learn from your experience or the private sector experience in kind of the reinventing low carbon energy transition in cities in particular? So how has kind of your role been assisting cities and local governments, in particular Indonesia? How can they benefit from this experience?
Yeah, thanks, Roxana, and thanks for the great discussion so far. So maybe just as thinking through this, BP, which people will probably know more as an oil and gas company, has been around since 1908, and until really the end of 2019 was very focused on finding and producing oil and gas, and turning it into products that we use in cars and planes and feedstocks into chemicals and plastics and that sort of thing. There were a few triggers, I suppose. So we were starting to work on emission reduction targets around our own operations. So the assets that we run around the world in sort of 2018 and 2019. But we had a leadership change in early 2020, new CEO, who is an oil man by background, I guess is fair to say. So although he comes from that background, he spent a good period of time going out externally and discussing with a whole range of stakeholders. So I think my first kind of reflection of what BP's been through in the last couple of years is being clear about what the vision or objective is. So as I say, he went out and talked to many national governments where we work and local governments where we work, big sort of financial institutions who invest in BP, NGOs and smaller stakeholders, and a whole range of other sort of interested parties to get clear on, look, as an energy company, what do you want from us over the next sort of decade and beyond, to give us a really clear steer of how they see sort of BP's role in the energy space. So that enabled us to come up with a very clear strategy and objective with some very clear targets that we could underpin with clear data, and really start to convince people internally about why it was important, and also people externally. So there's a piece about clear objectives, there's a piece about clear data to justify that objective and the sort of path to get from where you are to where you're trying to go. I think there's a piece about focusing on what you can control as an organization or as an entity. So there are obviously some things that are really out of your control, whether in the world of BP, there are obviously plenty of things we can't control in the areas that we work in. I guess having done some work and having had a number of conversations with kind of city sort of leadership or regional districts or industrial parks or whoever, I think understanding the role between being what you have a decision, where you can make a decision to progress an opportunity versus where you are more a convener or an influencer to help other private sector businesses come together is a really important aspect. And where you can or cannot influence sort of overarching policy at a national or a kind of state level. I think another one, which is from a kind of control perspective, is very difficult and it's a huge challenge, but is the sort of the impact of externalities in the world of kind of pollution, air pollution, the knock-on impacts on healthcare, the costs of providing healthcare, etc. As you start to look at that in a holistic way, what might seem like a significant investment in one technology or solution rapidly becomes something that pays back collectively at a regional or city level. And then I think the third point is being clear that whatever view and vision you set out with, you'll have to change, because we are evolving quite rapidly. Even from where we were 2 years ago, we've just provided a bit of an update externally on some of the areas that in 2 years, there are things we got wrong. There are focus areas that we didn't, or there are areas we didn't focus on enough because the technology, and particularly the technology and the policy support for some energy vectors and mobility solutions has accelerated more than we expected in some parts of the world, and that's a great outcome. But being flexible, being adaptable as opportunities change. So I think they're the kind of three, I guess, big buckets of things that I reflected on earlier.
Thank you, Rob. I do appreciate it. Those are very big points. And of course, they work across the board in cities in Indonesia and in cities everywhere, facing similar challenges of decarbonization or any other aspect of their kind of running their infrastructure and public services, from the finance point to, working with partnerships, which I'll get to with my introduction to Bagus and how we can leverage those partnerships. And of course, knowing limitations and where to kind of seek that additional support. I particularly like your point about strategy and kind of ever evolving as well. I think it's very important to have a clear mission and a goal and a vision to sign up to for everyone, for communities and citizens, as part of the plans for urban areas. However, we also understand that if those plans don't change in regular intervals, then we obviously haven't taken into account a lot of the new developments in technology and people's preferences in climate change, which is happening so fast as well. So we do need that adaptability as well. So thank you for highlighting it. Bagus, thank you again for joining us. We have heard from Iberini and Rob on very important activities that are happening in Indonesia and in cities in Asia more broadly. You're an assistant professor at University of Nottingham. You have joined us as part of the UK-Indonesia Consortium for Interdisciplinary culinary sciences, which seeks to expedite knowledge and technology transfer between the two countries. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of the collaboration partnerships, the role of science in particular, and innovation in tackling climate change, but also in those co-benefits that Rob mentioned as well, for health, for underpinning socioeconomic development more broadly as well as part of this low carbon transition. So what notable achievements could you list as part of either the consortium or, especially in partnership with other organizations in the UK and Indonesia?
Thank you, Roxana, and thank you, Connected Places, Catapult, and UK-ASEAN for having me. First, I would like to thank the other panelists, and I'm quite encouraged by Burini's highlights of some challenges that we perhaps could help address. So the UK-CIS is the consortium of universities consisted of Nottingham, Warwick, Coventry, along with 4 Indonesian highest-ranked universities, ITB, UGM, UI, and IPB. And then prior to its establishment in 2021, where the MOU was signed, there were some already collaborations between these universities and their Indonesian counterparts. So Warwick Universities, for example, I noticed that Christina Niu is here, has collaborated with Indonesian partners translating biomass constituents into biodegradable plastics. And Nottingham University and Coventry has their own collaborations. But the consortium is diaspora-led, and it has Indonesian interests at heart, and then it aims to catalyze knowledge transfer because we would like to try to contribute to the solution of a select number of Indonesia's greatest challenges, because we cannot choose too many of them. And certainly one in the list is the meeting the net zero emission targets. And pressing issue towards meeting that goal is giving solutions towards sustainable transportation. So that's what we've been trying to focus and try to highlight some of the high-profile collaborations that we have had over the last year. So the challenges in Indonesia, as Ibu Rini had mentioned before, is not just technical, but also structural. So for example, we have no standards for safety for electric vehicles, at least not sufficient ones. So we collaborated with Ministry of Transportation, the University of Nottingham signed an MOU with the Ministry of Transportation. And then we collaborated with them in highlighting which key areas of electric vehicle that are likely to fail, for example. And then we created policy brief that can support them. And also with regards to converting ICE cars into electric vehicles. So we haven't had any regulations that can undergird the expedition of electrification transportation. We also collaborated with the West Java government and the municipalities of Bogor. West Java government has a quite ambitious target in meeting their energy mix. They would like to source 20% of their energy via renewable energy in 2025 and progressing quite steadily in the future. So these are laden with challenges, certainly. And then in West Java government, we collaborated to help them. Governor Ridwan Kamil, with whom I met in COP26, would like to expedite the conversion of ICE into electric vehicles. So the University of Nottingham, in collaboration with Warwick University, in which there is the Warwick Manufacturing Group, the Institute for Aerospace Technologies, Power Electronic Machine Drives, we bring our expertise there and then try to help them in doing so. So we collaborated with the municipality of Bogor, for example, and in which they contributed 2 buses for us to convert. So, but then all of this, also by Speaker of Bapenas, I had mentioned before, requires funding. And then being a diaspora-led consortium fully supported by the Indonesian embassy, we were able to convince the Indonesian government, and in this case, Ministry of Education, Research and Technology, and Ministry of Finance through LPDP to give UK-CIS, not UK-CIS, but to give funding which UK-CIS then can administer to solve these challenges. So 2.3 million pounds sterling worth of research funding will be dispersed between 2022 and 2026 to solve 5 strands of research areas, including green economy. And in it, the sustainable transportation is also key. So with these great gestures, I think there is an opportunity for us to move further in making impact in Indonesia. We try to also convince the UK government to try to contribute and respond to these great initiatives by the Indonesian government. And then now it's the time for collaboration that you had mentioned, and looking forward to it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Bagus. That was a great insight to the work that you have done, and obviously that opens up more opportunities. And I'd like to bring Allison now in. Thank you, Allison. You've just been introduced yourself through the presentation, but having done this great piece of work around net zero in Indonesia, and having heard from Bagus on the foundation that has been laid kind of from both academic and private and public sector collaboration, what would you say are the areas that really can continue to boost the flows between the UK and Indonesia around skills, jobs, capital, and technology in the net zero space?
Thanks, Roxana. I think that's a great question. And I think Dr. Bagus has actually just kind of laid a really great kind of platform, because I think we need to utilize existing sort of opportunities and collaborate. And if there are things going on around technology that are actually taking place, the mobility examples on the ground, well, we should see how we can support that, how we can collaborate, how we can bring in those partners, look at bringing in the financing and the funding for that. And I think that that's a really fantastic opportunity. We should be utilizing organizations like the UK-Indonesia Consortium for Interdisciplinary Sciences, using this business council, leveraging all these opportunities that we actually have to build on and collaborate. I know in the UK, the Connected Places Catapult are obviously doing some really exciting projects with, for example, the UK's Department for Transport, looking at decarbonising transport across maritime, freight, road vehicles, and aviation. And there's some exciting learnings that we can share, that we can look at if there are opportunities. One of the other things I think that did come up obviously earlier is financing, is funding, and it's the same in the UK. We can't rely solely on government funding. So I think really interesting in the UK, the Connected Places Catapult has launched something called the UK-CCIC, which is the UK Cities Climate Investment Commission. I think I got that right. And this is really looking at how cities can create investable propositions to fund their road to net zero, because there's a huge funding gap between what they receive from the government and what they actually need to deliver and to create this change. And it's very early in its journey, but potentially this is something that can be looked at internationally as well, in terms of a model to use. And I think the sort of funding element for me seems quite key, because there's some great initiatives, there's some great opportunities, but how do we take these forward? How do we actually kind of get these delivering on the ground and create sustainable opportunities? So I think that sort of leveraging existing organizations and those collaborative sort of partnerships are crucial, and also then looking into those funding streams and seeing how we can create the sustainable projects going forward.
Thank you, Allison. Yes, definitely collaboration is the way forward. We can only build on the foundation that we've set out, and this is exactly what we're here to do, to discuss those opportunities. I see a lively discussion shaping up in the Q&A, the chat already, and I've picked out a couple of really interesting questions that we have, and I think they will give us some perspective from the panelists' view as well. So one of the first ones was around the move of the capital and how that is going to impact, specifically DKA Jakarta. So we have obviously heard about, and then we have discussed in our report as well, the impact of the move to Nusa Tenggara, and how this is going to affect the net zero future that we have focused on so far. So Allison, of course, as you've seen in the report, that particular aspect has been kind of seen as something that is not really going to impact Jakarta's future in the next 10 years because of the already kind of established network, capital, the flows, it's still kind of the port and where we see, a lot of the concentrated activity to happen. But it would be interesting to see what the future for the new capital would be. So perhaps Ibu Rini, and you can give us an insight on how this will impact, from a transport perspective. What is your plan for the new capital, and are there any particular projects you can highlight of something that we can begin, with a blank slate and create an opportunity for a low carbon future mobility? Ibu Rini, do you have an insight on the new capital's future and what Damri's plan is for the low carbon transition there?
Damri plans is as part of our transformation. We really do need to see how we can change the organization into a much more high technological customer orientations and innovations, and one of them is this eco-friendly buses. We already have in our hands future projects from the Ministry of Transportation to support with electrical buses. At least we have 4 or 5 more activities coming up. But then again, our issues right now is still how do we get the buses, so because not too many provider, not much of provider. Secondly, the regulation, as I'm keen to understand from Dr. Bagus as well, is he having the same problem as we do, the electricity supplies, the models, where are we going to put this? Because if this is an assignment, this is not yet a public for mass public. We are having also actually support from ADB for electrical buses, but then again, it has to be delayed due to the current circumstances of the pandemic. There's not many people, not many transportation. It's banned everywhere lately, so in my opinion, we need to go forward to this, but I think there has to be some standardization, on how we're going forward. What technology do we need to understand, because so many coming from everywhere right now. We are the users actually. So this has to be solved. The ecosystem for this low carbon technology or whatever has to need to be established first before we're going in a massive way. In my opinion, we have to do it step by step, but then again, what step do we need to take first on these activities?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rini, for highlighting this. Bagus, do you have an insight on what steps we have to take first?
Okay. Well, first on the first questions about the capital being moved to the new island Borneo right now. One research that we've been doing is to take a look into the behavior of peatlands, which is rich in Borneo. So this is a massive carbon sink. Indonesia have a lot of it, way more than Glasgow has or Scotland has. But it's a very complicated poromechanics issue. So if it maintains its structure, it can become a great CO2 sink. If it bursts, then we have all the catastrophe. So this is something that I think the Indonesian government will pay more attention to, having its capital right there. So we're, if at all there's an opportunity for UK researchers to collaborate with Indonesia, this would be one of the areas. The other being mangrove and preservations and biodiversity, etc. And then as Ibu Rini had mentioned earlier, so there's a lot of confusion at the moment in Indonesia. I'm sorry to use those words, but this is something as that we can also see as an opportunity for the UK to try to highlight its contribution and collaborate with Indonesian policymakers and higher education institutions. So we don't have the regulations at the moment. And then, so with West Java government, for example, we are helping them to create the real roadmap to develop the EV infrastructures. This is not just propulsions and converting ICE into EV. This is also in regards to procurement and provision of charging stations. And first of all, PLN is delegated, the Indonesian National Electric Company is delegated to provide all that. But then the devils is in the details. Where exactly in West Java are you going to put this charging station? How many do you procure it? What are the financial models? Do you source it with renewable energy, solar rooftop? How are you going to do that? So everybody is still asking questions, and this is where the research really coming into this. So another aspect that is quite interesting is this: Indonesia has, in my opinion, is quite prohibitively difficult to fulfill local domestic content requirements for electric vehicles to operate. It's just, first of all, it's too expensive at the moment right now. A Hyundai Ioniq costs about 3 times of Toyota Avanza. So only on the private sector is too expensive. The public sector is the area where EV transformation can take place, because the government can spend the money to do that. But still, this local domestic constraint is so constraining. And then so one of the ways to bridge the gap is via research, because research, I think, occupies, if I'm not mistaken, 20% of that local domestic content. But we don't have the infrastructure in Indonesia that can translate high TRL research into prototypes. That's where the UK can come in, and that's what we are aiming to do that. So you bring your research, and then you collaborate with West Java government or Indonesian universities under the UKCIS network, and then you try to make it easy for the Indonesian polytechnics, SMEs, and others to come up with the technologies that would otherwise be expensive for them themselves to develop, for example. So we bring our facilities, and this is something we can think about together, because it's very difficult to fulfill. It's 40% by 2024, and then progressively until 80%. So even in ICE cars, we only have 40% local domestic content, let alone electric vehicles. So this is very difficult. So Ibu Rini, so those are just my concerns, and there's a lot of things to do together, not to mention regulations.
The concern is very mutual, Pak Bagus.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you both for your insights. It sounds like there will be a conversation continuing on how to take this forward. Just in the interest of time, I'd like to ask a very quick question to perhaps Rob and Allison. We have had one quick question on how Indonesian small and medium enterprises can what are the routes for cooperation with UK businesses moving into Indonesia, and perhaps vice versa, how UK companies can enter the Indonesian market. So any thoughts, final thoughts, just 30 seconds on what the best routes for cooperation could be from both ecosystems?
I think very quickly, sorry, Rob, I'll jump in there. Very quickly, I think very much utilising business councils for SMEs, very much kind of utilising opportunities of working with, I suppose, organisations like Connected Places, Catapult, if there are pilots that we're going to be able to take forward. Also, the Department for International Trade, obviously very proactive. And I think we know that it is hard for SMEs to enter new markets, and we want to take those steps to try and make it easier and create those opportunities, and vice versa, to maybe create sort of collaborative partnership opportunities for Indonesian SMEs to be able to partner and bring back to, you know, their technologies, solutions, sort of back to the UK as well. So very quick from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Basically, this is a call to action for everyone to read the CPC report. When it's published in a couple of weeks, you will get more information from the routes to cooperation. Rob, any final thoughts, just as we're wrapping up?
No, I'd echo actually what Alison said. I think these sort of communities are an extremely valuable way to deepen one's understanding of where the challenges are, where the opportunities are across a whole range of kind of technologies or business models or whatever the solutions are. And I think the other piece as well is working with or making connections, having connections into some of the companies who have operated in Indonesia, for example, for a number of years, and sort of ability to share some of those learnings, but also to bring experience from other markets that are neither the UK nor Indonesia, but where UK companies have a lot of experience helping share that knowledge and learnings with companies looking to operate in Indonesia or vice versa.
Thank you. Well, that was a great wrap up, and thank you again to all of our panelists, Ibu Rini, Bagus, Rob, Allison. Thank you for the lively and engaging panel discussion on these developing those emissions reduction strategies and the challenges and of course the opportunities that they bring both in the UK and Indonesia. We have focused on kind of our common experience and the sharing and learning and the opportunities for cooperation. I want to thank the audience again also for their insightful and provoking questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but we will be happy to respond to them offline. And now I will hand back to Ken to close the event. Thank you.
That was such fun to listen to, and I, for one, learned an awful lot from the panel. So thank you very much indeed, everybody. So just to draw things to a close, going right back to the beginning of this webinar, Richard Graham challenged us to think about where the best opportunities lie, where we're working together to achieve the transition that we've been talking about. And we've heard a number of those opportunities. Richard himself focused on the renewable sector. He talked about UK expertise in solar, wind energy, small turbines, as well as offshore wind, where the UK does have a lot of technology, and also in marine energy using tides and waves. Ibarini talked about electric vehicles, and that was built on as well by Bagus, the importance for really an entire mobility transition. But reference was made to the fact that it's a bit of a challenge because the electric vehicles are perhaps 3 times what it would cost to buy a fossil fuel powered vehicle. And Bagus' advice was that really we need to start in the public sector, which I thought was a very good way in which to focus the thought. And buses were mentioned on a number of occasions. There's also a lot of expertise that we can both work together on in carbon sequestration and storage. And this is an area that the University of Nottingham is working on. And it occurred to me that it may be a useful conversation for Rob and Bagus to have offline if BP is also looking at CCS and applying this in Indonesia. Moving also into natural capital, Bagus talked about mangroves and the important role that mangroves play as part of a wider strategy in the management of carbon in natural capital sinks. Now, none of this, of course, can be achieved without the integrated value that education brings at all levels, both technical education, right the way through to higher level research-led insights and development and innovation. And I think that the UK-ASEAN, of which Bagus is representing today, is a very important way forward and an area that we'll need in future to attract further funding support. And within Indonesia, clearly the leadership that Bappenas shows will enable the many initiatives and excellent progressive developments that are made to be integrated into the national plan so that resources are concentrated and are well spent. And this really, I think, was underpinned by Rob's comments on having clear objectives and clear data to justify them. And Alison, of course, in her remarks talked about the importance of verification. So if one's generating data, to verify that. So that's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you all very, very much indeed. We all recognize that climate change is a difficult challenge for the world, but it's not insurmountable. In the 80s, we addressed the problems with the ozone layer. We now have this wider issue with the world heating up, and we'll address that through managing the emissions that are being made around the world. And there's no end to the talent that both our countries can draw on, and of course CPC's ongoing work with the net zero framework has helped us to identify the opportunities where we can together make a difference. So finally, my thanks to all the speakers and to everybody for being on the call and for the knowledge and insight shared. Please do drop a note through to alison.young@cp.catapult.org.uk. You'll see Alison's address on the slides when they're distributed. And my thanks to the speakers, everyone today, from Angie at Bapinas, Allison, Roxana at CPC, Iberini at Damri, Rob Cooper at BP Cities and Solutions, and Dr. Bagus Moljadi at the University of Nottingham. Thank you all very much indeed, and this concludes the forum.